This is Liverpool Live Radio across the Northwest, North Wales and Merseyside, and I'm Paul Higgs on this Saturday afternoon. The new song from Kylie plays in the next 50 minutes or so, but we're going to talk Everton for the next few minutes, and what a day it was yesterday with the sale of the club, or the potential sale of the club, to 777 Partners. We're going to talk about that now with Rodger Armstrong. Rodger is a lifelong Evertonian who has contributed to a number of podcasts, and I think is an excellent authority on all things Everton. Rodger, really good to talk to you today. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Paul. That's very kind of you to say so. I think your pick of going underground is quite apposite in the circumstances. You know?
I like where you're coming from, because clearly things at Everton have not been going well, to say the least. Excuse me while I get a frog in my throat. But the big story yesterday, of course, was the news that Moshiri has agreed to sell the club to an American investment fund, 777 Partners. I think it is fair to say, Rodger, that there are some who believe that this deal may not go through. I think there are those who believe that this deal potentially could be bad, not just for Everton, but also for English football in general. What's your reaction, though, to the news that we heard yesterday?
It's very difficult, isn't it? Because, you know, the club, and I've talked about this a lot on a number of different podcasts with a number of different people and fans and people that I sort of interact with. The club made an announcement, and I have to tell you, I don't know what or who Everton Football Club is, other than Farhad Moshiri. He owns 94.1% of the club. And so the club said, and a lot of people say, oh, well, the club said. My dad, who, God bless him, he's 88, he texted me immediately to say, oh, Moshiri sold the club. What happened yesterday was he announced that he'd reached an agreement, and let's probably keep it in layman's terms without being patronising. It's an agreement in principle with a company called 777 Partners, 777. Some might even call them 999, to buy his entire equity stake in the club for a sum undisclosed, on the basis that they will also guarantee the future funding of Bramley Moore, where there's anywhere between £200 and £300 million outstanding. So it's an agreement in principle, Paul. That's what it is. There are a number of hurdles to overcome. They need the approval of some existing creditors, one of which is Rights and Media Funding, who blocked a deal with MSP Capital, who've subsequently loaned £100 to £150 million to Everton and directly, in fact, to the stadium company, and they're the second creditor who would have to approve this deal. And then, of course, you've got the authorities, the footballing authorities, specifically the Premier League, with their right and proper owners and directors tests. So even the club, a.k.a. Farhad Moshiri, have said that this deal will hopefully complete by the end of the year. So it's not a done deal, far from it. And we'll just have to see how the next weeks and probably months pan out. There's a great deal of uncertainty. 777 have stakes in a range of football clubs, some minority, some major, across Europe, in France and Spain, and indeed Italy. And not all of those clubs have performed particularly well. Genoa recently, for example, needed €5 million to build a new training complex, and 777 issued a bond for fans to sort of sign up for. I'm not sure that's the kind of owner that Everton fans are looking for. We'll just have to see. It's an agreement in principle, nothing more at this stage is my take on it.
I've seen it said, Rodger, that 777 Partners have got a portfolio full of distressed assets and struggling football clubs. And whilst there has been work undertaken in growing the portfolio, as you say, there's been very little in terms of on-pitch success that would suggest that it will be any different for Everton should this sale go through.
Well, look, in the world of business, you tend to buy companies that aren't performing well. That's really what happens, because they're the cheapest ones that are available. In Everton's case, Everton has performed appallingly from a commercial perspective, really for a long period of time, and actually that performance has got worse under the ownership of Farhad Moshiri. We're still cash negative, which means our income is less than our expenditure. We've spent an awful lot of money and paid an awful lot of money in wages to players, the transfer market, over these to the 7 seasons. We face a Premier League inquiry, which may lead to nothing, which may lead to a fine, which may lead to a transfer ban, or even a points deduction. Who knows? But, you know, Everton are a club in distress. We're in the bottom three. We've escaped relegation by the skin of our teeth for the last 2 years. So you would think they're ripe for someone to come in and pick them up for a song. The problem is that Mashiri has really been demanding, I think, an unrealistic price, and the only people prepared to pay what he's wanted for his equity seem to be 777 partners.
And I think there are those, Rodger, as well, who question whether any significant cash will change hands initially. And when we talk about the final price paid for Mashiri shares, you know, that could be subject to, as you say, the Premier League's independent commission inquiry, but also Everton's performances on the pitch as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, Paul. There's so little that's clear. As usual with Everton make an announcement, Farhad Mashiri makes an announcement, and there are more questions than answers. We hear rumour and counter-rumour. I think there's quite an elaborate PR campaign going on behind the scenes from 777 people and Mashiri's people. You know, I read a piece in the paper today about a new dawn for the Toffees. I think this is anything but. You know, it might be a transfer of ownership, but these people don't have a great track record. You know, the owners faced criminal investigation and still some outstanding charges, which I know are refuted, but it's still a matter of record that those charges exist. And so I think there is quite an elaborate PR campaign. You're hearing different things. Rights and media funding will object. Rights and media funding won't object. There's no problem with the government don't have an issue. The Department of Culture, Media and Sport do or don't have an issue with potentially 777 getting involved. 777 may, in fact, have attracted some investment from the Saudi State Fund, the Public Investment Fund. So there are so many rumours and counter-rumours out there, Paul. You know, it's a circus, and that's what Everton has sadly been for 6 or 7 years, in fact longer. But particularly, you know, it's been a real circus under Mashiri's ownership, and we as fans would just like a decently run club who might win a game or two and might give us a bit of peace and a little bit of entertainment every weekend, but sadly not.
Well, this is it. And to pick up on a couple of points you made as well, because you talk about 777 partners having invested in a number of football clubs we know in Europe and also the wider world. My understanding, Rodger, is that the Premier League's fit and proper owners test is more stringent in the Premier League than it could be elsewhere. So whereas 777 partners have been able to invest in other clubs overseas, the test in the UK is more stringent. Plus also, I believe earlier this year, the Premier League club said that Financial Conduct Authority approval will also be required as well for the sale to go through. So as you say, when you take all that into consideration, this is far from a done deal as yet.
Well, I think so. And also important to note that there are new rules which prohibit leveraged buyouts of clubs. You know, like, you know, Man United was basically financed on debt. So they will have to have the money. They will have to have show proof of funds. They will have to display quite significant and comprehensive business plans over a period of time, and that they have the funds to carry out those plans. They will have to put forward lists of directors, and those people will have to be vetted, which is slightly more rigorous than a DBS check. You know, that they are fit and proper people to run a football club. Mashiri's talked a lot about expertise, you know, and frankly, he's hired very little expertise in his time. In fact, he's retained largely poorly performing people who've been there for years and years, and only in the last 12 months have some of those people moved aside, although the chairman remains in place. We're in desperate need of expertise at Everton. You can see the ease with which clubs who previously we would have turned our noses up, like Brighton and Hove Albion, like Brentford, how easily they have transformed themselves, both commercially and on the pitch, into successful enterprises. And yet, for all the money that's been spent, Everton are still wallowing at the bottom of the league table and are still not even washing their own face commercially.
And Rodger, just for the benefit of anybody listening who may not know the background to this, just to clarify for anyone listening, Mashiri has invested more than £750 million in Everton since 2016. Clearly, a number of supporters have been very unhappy about the ownership. Back in February, Mashiri told Everton's Fans Advisory Board that the club was not for sale, but he had been talking to top investors of real quality. And then back in March, the club posted financial losses for the 5th successive year, taking their total losses over that period to more than 430 million. Now, as we know, Everton are in the process of building the new stadium at Bramley-Moore Dock. The costs there could reach 760 million, which was 260 million more than originally quoted. And in terms of this sale, this is what Moshiri had to say. He said, "I have been open about the need to bring in new investment and complete the financing for the new stadium, which I have predominantly financed to date. I have spoken to a number of parties and considered some strong potential opportunities. However, it is through my lengthy discussions with 777 that I believe," says Moshiri, "that they are the best partners to take this club forward with all the benefits of their multi-club investment model." I think the question I would put to you then, Rodger, at this stage is, if this sale doesn't go ahead, where does that leave Everton Football Club, in your opinion?
Well, back to square one, or I don't know what comes before square one. We've talked about a foot race. We've talked about trying to catch up with our erstwhile peers, but actually we haven't been standing still. We've actually been going backwards. And so we need something that's going to firstly arrest the decline, something that's going to bring some stability, something that's going to bring professionalism, something that's going to bring some hope and some optimism. None of those things will exist for so long as Farhad Moshiri is the principal owner of the football club. And none of those things will exist, in my opinion, for so long as Bill Kenwright is the chairman. However, there's a baby out with the bathwater and fire and frying pan argument here, because there are a number, as I said, of concerns about 777. If the right and proper directors' fit and proper tests are passed, and if they have the funds, then good luck to them. And I'm sure they will get the support of the fan base, because that's all we want. We want a properly run football club. If this deal doesn't go ahead, then it's really, really poor for the short and medium-term future of the football club. And it may put into question the long-term future too, because Moshiri clearly has run out of cash. Now, he's been unlucky. Let's be clear about this. He's put in £700 to £800 million, and he's all but funded a brand new stadium, bar a couple of $100 million. What's that between friends, you might say? But he's been unlucky principally because he's made bad appointments and he's left incompetent people in charge. And he's been unlucky because his best mate and potentially one of his sources of funds, and certainly source of a number of commercial deals, Alisher Usmanov, was the subject of government sanctions post the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And that's probably the most unlucky event that occurred outside of the COVID pandemic, which clearly affected all clubs. So he hasn't had great luck, but he really hasn't helped himself, and he really hasn't. For a man who spent that amount of money and is potentially giving us a brand new stadium, the fact that he is not loved by the fan base, that's a pretty good effort for a man to have spent that much money and for the fans to want him out.
We're talking to Rodger Armstrong on all things Everton this afternoon on Liverpool Eye Radio. Rodger, good to get your thoughts on the potential sale of the club. But let's just talk about matters on the pitch for the next couple of minutes. And, clearly it's been a hugely frustrating start to the season for Everton, just 1 point from the first 4 games of the season. Why for you has it gone so badly wrong for Everton so far?
Well, we didn't really invest very well or very much. We didn't have very many options in the transfer market. We've not really strengthened in the areas that we needed to strengthen, and that would predominantly, for me, be at the back. Beto looks like a good acquisition, and Dan Juma provides me with some real encouragement, bit of pace, bit of trickery, and Beto has something about him. He looks like a real forward that, Everton fans can get behind. The issue for me is defensive. We've lost Yerry Mina and we've lost Conor Cody. And for some reason, the manager thought that Michael Keane was a Premier League centre-back when nearly all the fan base knew that he wasn't, and he persisted with him in the first 2 or 3 games of the season. Thankfully, now Branthwaite's come in and he looks a real prospect. But we look really weak at the back, across the entire back four. Fullbacks cause me a problem. Patterson looks like he really is raw, and you can't afford that. We thought when we got Dyche we were getting someone who would keep us solid at the back, nick the odd 1-0 win. It might not be pretty, but it would be effective. And this season we've been shipping goals. We look vulnerable almost to any attack, and it looks like we have to score 2, to win a game. and occasionally, to get a point as we showed at Sheffield United for our first point of the season. It's really disappointing, and I think that's where the problem lies. So they almost look like a team we've never met at the back. Pickford, absolutely superb. Pickford saved, very unfortunate with the own goal against Sheffield United, but saved us in the last minute. And I don't think you can hold him responsible for the defeats ahead of that. The midfield looks, it's lacking in something. It's lacking really in a playmaker. And I'm not sure that the midfield really supports the defence. So, it's at the back where I fear for us. And tomorrow Arsenal come to town. I know they've got a bad record. I know we often beat them. And I know, Goodison will be a bear pit Sunday, 4:30. Everyone will be up for it. But we just haven't got very good players, Paul. And I'm not sure that the coach is improving them. However, how ironic is it that Dyche can be there with as bad a record as Lampard and Benitez in terms of, the last 15, 16 games, 3 wins or whatever it is. No one really considers him to be under pressure because all of this circus that's going on behind the scenes.
I do agree. I think when you look at Beto, you think you've got a player there who has the potential to have a really good season for Everton. I think there was one stat I saw against Sheffield United. He completed 6 dribbles against Sheffield United, more than any other Premier League player has managed this season. And I think with Dominic Calvert-Lewin back in training and hopefully returning to fitness, maybe that combination of DCL and Beto up front could be an exciting prospect for Evertonians.
Yes, I'm not sure how you get both of them in the side, and Danjuma and Dwight McNeil. I think we need some crosses coming into the box for either DCL or Beto to get on the end of, because we're going to play, Ghana Gay and Onana, and I suspect Decore or Ghana in a 3, if you like, in the centre of the midfield, and whether it's 4-4-1-1 or whether it's 4-3-3 or 4-5-1. I'm not sure there's room for a DCL and a Beto at the same time without sacrificing Danjuma or Dwight McNeil, who are the providers. Everton have had a very high XG, and that's great. If an XG equaled goals, we'd be in the top. We'd be in Europe at this moment in time. But the quality of the chances hasn't been great, I think. And our ability to take them pre-Beto has been even poorer. So we do need Dwight McNeil back in the team, I think. He had a real impact at the end of last season, particularly in that game against Brighton, that miracle that somehow we won 5-1 and stayed up as a result of. But yeah, top of the pitch looks okay. But we need to be able to keep them out at the back. And we haven't really played anyone yet, Paul. Who have we played? We've played Villa, shipped 4 to them. Sheffield United shipped 2, and we've lost to Wolves and Fulham. So not Wolves. We've lost to Fulham and missing one. Who was the other team that we lost to?
Oh, do you know
I
what?
Forget.
Yeah, me too. But I was just going to say, looking ahead, was it Wolves? Was it somebody?
It must have been Wolves. Yeah, I was right first
Wolves.
time. Yeah. We beat Doncaster in the cup. My point is, we ain't played City. We're only playing Arsenal tomorrow. We haven't played Tottenham. We haven't played the Reds from over the park. They're coming up soon. So, and we're still conceding goals to sides that you'd think we'd be able to keep out. That's the worrying part for me.
And, you talk about Everton's recent record against Arsenal. I know you take these things with a pinch of salt, but Everton have won 4 of the last 5 against the Gunners at home. They drew the other. And in fact, last season, the fixture against Arsenal was Sean Dyche's first in charge as manager. And James Tarkowski, of course, headed in the winner in that 1-0 win. Looking at the team news for tomorrow, Rodger, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is available to face Arsenal tomorrow. He has recovered from that facial injury. Jared Branthwaite, Lewis Dobbin and James Tarkowski have all overcome minor issues, but Jack Harrison will not feature as he builds his fitness following a groin problem. So, yeah, you talk about the players. I mean, let's be honest with you. We mentioned Everton's recent record against Arsenal, but again, this is going to be a difficult game for Everton tomorrow.
Yeah, you'd like to think that we can start on the front foot and we can actually press them and actually put them under some pressure. I think there's no doubt that man for man Arsenal have better players, more skillful players, more creative players. But if we can get, the sort of up and at 'em, bear pit mentality, which I'm a partial fan of, but I would like to see some skill in Royal Blue as well, because, we aren't a club. Yes, we have the Dogs of War, but we have had some skillful players in our time. And I think the fans, there's a little bit, if I could just pick up on a bit of a hobby horse of mine, I'm sick and tired of being told that all Everton fans want is sweat on the shirt. I'd like some skill on the ball, and there isn't enough of that skill on the ball. And I'm getting a bit fed up with the manager telling us that sweat on the shirt, and that's good, honest, and giving everything they've got, and the players have given everything. But that's what the fans are looking for. Everton fans are more intelligent than that. They set higher standards, and we understand that you need a combination of effort and skill and coaching and tactics and intelligence to win games of football. It's not just a bleep test. This is a test of skill as well as fitness, and I don't think we've been shown enough skill under Dyche.